Is Joann M., and she's from Silver Spring, Maryland.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joann. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you. When I signed up for this, I had no idea how many people there would be here, and what a huge room. But I know that you are all me, and I am you. We're all women in recovery, and so this is very exciting. You're also friends. There are many people that I know quite well who are here tonight. My sponsor, who you'll hear more about. Where are you, Laura? Sponsees, friends, members of my home group. But there are many friends who know me better than I know myself, even if I don't know your name or have never been to your city. I'm one of those CIA kids that you've heard about. Grew up in Kansas City, where the first of these wonderful gatherings took place. So when I looked at the history of the International Women's Conference, I was quite excited to see that my home state and states close by sponsored some of the first of these gatherings many years ago. We had a very happy family at the beginning. I hear many, many stories of friends in the program who suffered a great deal from very early childhood. And the more I get to know my story, the more I have to admit the really good things that also happened to me, which is that in the beginning, I had two very loving parents. However, coming, as I know now, from a very long line of Irish Catholic alcoholics, probably hundreds of years of them, especially on my father's side, slowly, gradually, the man that had almost been ordained a priest and left the seminary to marry my mother, became a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. My mom didn't let him drink around the house much, but he would disappear and come back a different person. So slowly, our life really changed, and by the time I was a teenager, he was doing such crazy things that we couldn't invite anybody into the house. And I lived what felt like a real double life. No one could know what was going on in our household. And I was my mother's confidant. So when I was 15, we decided that we would commit him to a mental institution, not in our city, in Omaha, Nebraska. And I think my mother was really, now that I'm a member of our sister program, one of those black belt Al-Anons without ever having met anybody in Al-Anon. Once she was fed up, she was so fed up that he was never allowed, not only back in our house, but back in the city without her permission. And that gave some relief, to the situation at our home, but I really didn't want any parts of what I saw. I knew that alcohol had something to do with it. And so I really pretty much avoided alcohol. Few experiments, some boyfriends offering it to me, that kind of thing. But I did not want to become like my father. And I didn't want any parts of marriage. I think I decided when I was about 7 that it was crazy for a woman to do that to herself. And so the only other alternative to a good Catholic girl in Kansas City in the 50s was the convent. So at 17, I escaped our home and what probably would have been marriage and many children by the age of 20 or so. There was never a thought of being able to afford college or a career. I didn't know anybody that did that sort of thing. And so I'm very grateful today that that was my choice, that I didn't commit homicide at an early age. And that also, I happened to join an order that was probably the most progressive in the United States. It's the first all-American order celebrating their 200th anniversary this year. And I got an education, which I never would have gotten. I escaped from active alcoholism until my late 20s. And I got a spiritual life. So I had a lot that I lost as my drinking started taking off. And the way I got introduced to alcohol was through the revolution. I had a wonderful education about social injustice and that sort of thing, but my first teaching assignment was Montgomery, Alabama in 1963. The March on Washington, the 4 little girls killed in Birmingham that fall, and that was where I was sent to a very tiny white Catholic school, and there was a tinier black Catholic school. Made no sense, that they were separate. So I only lasted a year. I started an integrated baseball team and tried to get on the plane to Selma. They weren't real happy about that, so I got sent back to Kansas City the next year. And actually, the most exciting public stuff and jails and all of that in my story were really pre-alcohol, but I was able to get involved in all of the great social movements of the 60s, and I'm very happy about that. In 1969, I came to Washington to commit 5 federal felonies. So my little claim to fame is being the first nun in the United States to be convicted of felonies. And I faced over 35 years in prison. Thank God I didn't have to actually serve all that time. But I had a life that at one point did include speaking to large groups of people on college campuses around the country, committing other crimes, which I will not mention because they were never found out. And being a general troublemaker for about a year and a half. But along with all of the excitement of trying to overthrow the state, there were parties, the clutches after the demonstration when we analyzed everything, and I got introduced to the Berrigan Brothers rye whiskey in Baltimore, the Christian Brothers wine, all of the drugs that were passed around. And by this time, I guess I was 28. The habit, by the way, had been gone for a couple of years, but I was still a member of my religious order and very strongly supported by the nuns in what I was doing. Well, at least in the actions, not the drugs. And I sponsored 2 nuns today, one of whom is here. So I would not recommend this as a way to escape active alcoholism. It no longer works. There are plenty of people that have access to alcohol. But the convent, I feel, really did give me a life, an education, a desire to be of service, and passion about social action. However, the drinking, which at first was just social, eventually became, especially when I gave up all the drugs so I could join a radical organization that didn't accept that, the drinking really took off and became daily. Before too long, it was around the clock, and I mean this literally. I was one of those drinkers that got up in the middle of the night several times, ostensibly to get rid of all of the beer that I had ingested, but I drank every time I got up. I drank in the morning. Oddly enough, at the end, at my bottom, I had, I guess, what outside people would think is one of the fancier jobs of my life. But it was pretty meaningless in terms of social change. I worked in television on Capitol Hill, and so everybody drank, but I was a little extreme. I would go down to my car in the parking lot in the basement of the building to drink my lunch, which I kept, alcohol in the car at all times. I got very nervous if I got down to 3 cases of beer. That would only last me a couple of days. On an average, I drank a case on a working day, a couple on non-working days, plus all the hard liquor I could get inside me before I passed out at night. So that I am standing before you, healthy, alive, 71 years old, it's an absolute miracle. The last 2 years of my drinking, I hated it. When people romance drinking, I almost don't understand it. I don't think of a drink anymore as something that would entice me. And I know that's very different from some people's experience. But I drank against my will for so long, hated the person I had become. I felt I had been somebody, I had done something, made contributions to the world. And now I wanted to save the world, and I couldn't save myself. I remember many times doing one more absolutely insane thing, not just embarrassing myself, like throwing a Super Bowl party. I don't even like football. For the news bureau, everybody's showing up. I worked all day cleaning my little apartment and was passed out 2 hours before they came. And so I had to deal with walking in the next day and trying to act like it didn't happen. Embarrassing things like that. But the real thing that got me, I think, into the program was the inside suffering. I had a child who, even as an 8-year-old, would look at me and say, "Mommy, could you please not drink while you're driving the car?" And if there was anybody on the face of the earth that I wanted to stop drinking for, it was my son. I always loved him, but love is an action, not just a sentiment. And my actions showed that I was constantly choosing alcohol over his welfare. I was choosing men who were terrible influence on him, the last of which was a boyfriend I lived with for 5 years. I kept gravitating more and more toward people that I thought drank more than I did drugs I didn't choose to do at that moment. And when he tried to kill me and threatened to kill my son, you would think that would be the bottom. It got him out of our apartment and under a peace bond, which I had to beg for. But he has known every place I have lived since and has let me know that. He lives in the area, and I pray for him whenever I think of him and hope that he gets this program. But it wasn't the end. It did help me see that all that alcohol that I had left over from fancy parties that I had to throw for our company, all the beer, wasn't going anywhere else except into my body. And I could not stop. Along the way, a couple of friends, 2 members of a women's theater group that I was part of back in the activist days, pointed out that I drank rather a lot. And so I didn't speak to one of them for a year. I avoided them. And but one came to visit me from California for a week, and apparently her partner was an alcoholic, and she very gently told me a few things about Al-Anon and AA. But to my knowledge, before I walked into my first meeting, I had never met a sober alcoholic. I believe that I am the first that I know about in my whole family history who has ever gotten sober. And those feelings of self-hatred, shame, not being able to look in the mirror, disgust with myself, with what I had become, took me to a very, very dark place. And as many of you have experienced, we can go back toward a drink through our feelings. So I have to be very vigilant when I feel fearful, depressed, angry, resentful, because I know where it can take me to sheer hell. So on a particular weekend, it wasn't anything all that dramatic, other than that I had been living in such misery for so long and couldn't stop. One of these theater friends had accused me of losing his keys and attached it somehow to my drinking. which was unforgivable. And so he was going to be out in the country that weekend. I found out at the last minute. I couldn't go where I had planned to go. My son wasn't with me, and I knew I would be dead drunk by 10 o'clock. I don't know how it happened, but I called our central office, which is the Washington Area Intergroup. They directed me to the 180 Club. There are many people I know here who've been there. And I went to my first meeting. A very sick lady got me from my first meeting the next day to my second meeting. She showed me where it was. I've seen her in the rooms over the years, nodding out on the table, and I don't know if she is sober today, but God bless her, because she got me from the first meeting to the second meeting. And we help each other in AA many times, whether we know it or not, whatever our example is. The miracle happened between my third and my fourth meeting. I could not stop for longer than about 10 minutes from that. I will never do this again, to having a beer in my hand. And that day, I went to a meeting. It was on surrender, let go, give up. It's not about willpower. And I didn't try any harder than I ever had to stop drinking that night. But I made an agreement with a newcomer to meet her the next night at a speakers meeting. I came, she didn't, but she also somehow got me there. And there was a wonderful talk. I identified a lot, although the circumstances were different, with the woman's story, and she picked up her first-year chip. And then 3 guys went up and picked up 24-hour chips. And I did not realize until that moment that that had just happened to me. That somehow, after the meeting the night before, I hadn't had a drink. I must have been running late in the morning. I hadn't gotten up at night. What happened to my lunch? I really, to this day, have no idea how that happened to me, who could not stop, who drank enormous quantities of alcohol on a daily basis for years, and sobbing, tears falling down my face. I walked up and picked up my 24-hour chip. And to this day, whatever that power is that keeps me sober, I fall down before it in gratitude. I forgot to mention that being a nun turned me into an atheist. But I almost walked right out of the room when I saw the steps. I thought, if this is religious, it will not work for me. Been there, done that. I've evolved to whatever I was, a humanitarian. But I call it superstition, call it whatever you want. I am not sure that that will ever happen again. And so what I've done is what all of you do. I go to a meeting every day. I pray even though I had no understanding of what this power was. I'm grateful that it's separated, that the second step mentions a power greater than ourselves and doesn't use the word God. Today, I'm quite comfortable with that word. I think it may mean completely different things to every person in this room, and that is fine with me. I do not have to explain why you should not believe what I was brought up to believe, because it may work for you, and that's fine. I'm not in charge of anybody else's religious beliefs. And my sponsor was so helpful with that. When Catholics would come up to me and kind of go, "You'll get it, sister," and assume that, of course, I would go back to the religion of my youth, which I have not. But she really helped me see that if I wanted to stick with this program, it meant doing what you do, and that included prayer. So I have prayed. I love that beautiful serenity prayer. Thank you so much. I say it all the time. It saved my life. You don't have to understand God to be able to pray. You don't even have to know who the God of your understanding is, in my opinion. How much time? Okay. I didn't get sober fast enough there. My sponsor got me to do my 4-step kind of early at 9 months. I thought it was a little early, but I have become to believe that she just has some direct line to whatever wisdom and love and beauty and goodness is in the world, because I went off to the mountains and wrote for 3 days. That very weekend, the person at the top of my list, my father, who I wrote and wrote and wrote about, passed away. He died a horrible alcoholic death. And I would never have had the courage to take care of his funeral, or to allow the transformation that has happened in my heart, which has softened so much toward him. If I want forgiveness, if I want friendship and love and sobriety, why not my father, who suffered from this same disease and never intentionally tried to harm me? He was a very sick man. Today, meditation is a way that I feel I'm given an opportunity to transform my relationship with all my ancestors, especially my father and my mother. He is not alive in the flesh today, but I am the closest thing to him on earth. He's alive in me. He is able to live a sober life through me. So I feel that my sobriety is not just my own. It belongs to my entire family. It belongs to all of you. Without you, I wouldn't be sober for one day. About 6 years into sobriety, I felt I needed some instruction and help in meditation. I found a wonderful teacher, and today meditation is a very, very important part of my life. We're going to have meditation downstairs and a labyrinth and some beautiful opportunities during this weekend. And also I've been privileged to organize and help to lead women's AA retreats. So if anybody's interested in that, let me know. The relationships with my father, with my son's father, long story, I won't tell it now, but we meditate together today. I found a wonderful, wonderful husband in this program who has 29 years and is 15 years younger than me. Today is his birthday, and Even though I couldn't be with him, he encouraged me to come and said, please be of service. It's important for you to do that. So thank you, Pat. I love AA. I love meetings. I love my home group just before noon. I love my sponsors. I have two. I love my sponsees. I love all of you and know that the power of love is here in this room, in all our hearts, inviting us to become happy, joyous, free women, the women we are capable of becoming, one day at a time. Thank you so much.
And our second speaker this evening from Washington, D.C., now moved to Bowie. I say it wrong all the time. Bowie. And her name is Inez.
Wow. Good evening, everyone. My name is Inez, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. I want to say thank you to Missy for accepting the responsibility of this awesome task. And it's because of her hard work that we're all here. And that's how it is. I don't see Olivia, but I want to say thank you for ushering me up the steps. I appreciate that. I like to call my first sponsor my Moses. She shepherded me into this program before I knew that I even had a problem called alcoholism. I met her. I want to talk about her for a little bit. I met her at work. I had been transferring from job to job. I worked for the state of New York at the time, and I had been moving around from job to job. And I was having lunch while I was in training, and I saw this beautiful woman walking through the lunch area, just tall and magnificent. And I said, well, who's that lady? And the people that I was with said, oh, don't mess with her. Oh, no, no, no. You don't want to mess with her at all. No, no, no. Stay away from her. Well, my journey has been one of those God has a sense of humor journeys. And he paired me with her to work with. So every evening I worked with her. She worked on one end of the hospital unit, and I worked on the other end of the hospital unit. And every evening we would get together and talk about all of the things that had gone on our hospital unit. And then we talk about each other. So I'm sort of starting in the middle of my life, I guess, so to speak. But she would listen intently. She'd say, well, what are you going to do this evening? Oh, I'm just going to go out. Oh, okay. And she kept asking me that every evening. Oh, what are you going to do this evening? She said, well, we worked 3 to 11. And I'd say, well, I'm going to go out. That's what any good alcoholic does. They go out and they drink. And one day she gave me her phone number. And I said, why is she giving me her phone number? I don't fraternize with people at work. I don't call them. I certainly don't want to see them when I'm finished working. I only work because I like money. I don't work to make friends, and I just threw it in the bottom of my pocketbook. And didn't think anything about it, really. And those things that happen to you when you drink alcohol, like Joann was saying, rather compulsively, those things were happening to me. Can't find my car, don't know what time it is, all of that stuff. Urinating in the street if necessary, being a perfect lady, those things that happen. you know, finding ways to do that without wetting anything up. I mean, it's just amazing how that happened for me. Well, after one of those situations, a boyfriend pointed out to me that I had lost track of time. And I was like, I know what time it is. That couldn't possibly be right. He said, no, it's been 6 hours since you called me, and I think there's a little problem. And for whatever reason that day, I went in my pocketbook to get a cigarette, and I saw her number in there, and I called her. And she said, what's the problem? I said, I don't know, but I seem to be having some difficulties. She says, well, you know, I know some people that might be able to help you. I said, really? She said, oh, yeah. If you know where 185 Montague Street is, and if you hurry, you could get there by 12 o'clock, and there's some people upstairs that will help you. I knew where 185 Montague Street was. It was the side entrance to an Episcopal church in Brooklyn, New York. That was the diocesan church that my father had preached in many a time. My father had been an Episcopal priest, and I grew up in that lifestyle. So I certainly did know where that was. And for whatever reason, I got dressed up like I was going to the office, and I followed her direction and went there. And when I got there, you all were in a circle. And a woman broke from the circle and took my hand. And if you can, for me right now, would you hold the person's hand next to you? And she said to me, everything is going to be all right. You're in the right place. Welcome. So I say welcome to you. That's the language of the heart. That is the language of the heart. So I'll tell you a little of the background of the story so that you don't think that I just got here just because I was just lost my car and couldn't find the time. I was sitting there listening to Joann, and I know that I was born having the tendency to be an alcoholic. My mother used to buy candy from a store called Barton's Candy Store, and she just would bring home so many beautiful boxes of candy, and she would hide them around the house, and somehow I would always find them. And I would always eat all the candy in the bottom boxes, and then neatly tie, they used to tie it up in a string, and I would put them back in the closets and all the various places. And if they would ask, well, who ate the candy? It wouldn't be me. It would not be me. I had one brother, and he had no interest in eating the candy. So I know that there was something going on with me, even as a young child. I was craving it and looking for it. Like, gee, I wonder what Mom bought this time. I wonder where she hid it, you know. So I had no real exposure to alcohol. My parents didn't drink, and they were very involved in their church work. And I have to say that I felt very privileged. I was isolated. I was taken to private school, brought back home. I did not commingle with the children in the area. I wasn't allowed. That's the way it was. And I felt like I was privileged. I was trusted. My parents trusted that what they told me I was going to do. I often did not. I just did what I wanted to do. But they tried really, really hard to grow up a perfect individual. They spent money sending me to all kinds of dancing lessons, music lessons. They tried to acculturate me and make me just be the perfect little girl. I just said, well, I can perform, but I'm going to think something very different. And I would think about, what are those people doing over there, and what are those people doing over there? And eventually, I found out what they were doing. They were drinking alcohol, and they were taking an assortment of drugs. And one day I ventured over on that side to see what that was all about. Oddly enough, I did not drink. I did not even take any of the things that they were using. But I did indulge in the other thing that I found to be a drug of my choice, and that was guys and men and sex. That turned into an early pregnancy and an early marriage. And I married someone who brought, I remember we went shopping. We got married rather hastily, and after all, I'm the preacher's daughter. And of course, I'm the defiant daughter who tells her parents that I'm not going away. You can't send me anywhere. And no, I'm not going to any convents and no. I'm staying right here, and that's okay. You'll be fine. You'll get through this. You'll get through this. You know. They sent me to therapy. They thought that would work it out, but no, I told the therapist, there's something wrong with them. I'm perfectly all right. The therapist concurred. She said, yeah, there is a little something going on over there, and you might be right. So anyway, I got married, and I thought it was interesting that the first piece of furniture that my husband wanted to buy was a liquor cabinet. And I can see that liquor cabinet today. It was very unusual. We went down into the village to look for this liquor cabinet, and it was made out of parquet flooring. It was quite massive and quite beautiful, and that was the first piece of furniture that we bought. I'm still not drinking, but he's drinking. So as it goes, I'm watching him drink, and I'm having babies. So 2 more babies later, we decide to move to, well, actually it was 2 babies, and we moved to Long Island. He's still drinking, and I'm watching. But I'm also feeling like there's something not right about this drinking that he's doing. It was having some kind of effect on me, and I wasn't liking it. I wasn't liking his behavior either too much. And finally, at one point, he got off the commuter train. I'll never forget this day. He got off the commuter train with a cup in his hand. They used to sell alcohol on the commuter train. We had moved to Long Island. And it just looked so inviting. And I'll never forget, it was an I.W. Harper with ginger ale and a piece of lime. And I said, give me some of that, please. And he said, sure. And I was off to the races. Everybody in suburbia drank alcohol. That was the pastime there. Women, men, teenagers, everybody drank alcohol. And I was fascinated with the idea that you could take a shopping cart into the liquor store, like you were buying groceries. It's like, oh, this is fascinating, Right in the store, this, that. So that was my life for many years. My husband and I had big, fabulous parties, bought lots of alcohol, and drank a lot of it. So like many of you, I lost the marriage, the house, the car, and the children. And I went on to continue to drink. And I was in that dark place that Joann was talking about, that place of pain and suffering. It had control of me. It made all the decisions for me. It decided where I was going to go, how I was going to drive my car, who I was going to sleep with, and how I was going to spend my money. That's how alcohol had me. At some point, I decided that I was smart enough to figure out how I was going to steal some money from a man that I was mixed up with, that I had had a brief encounter with. Is that one of the things that we're going to work through this weekend? Yes. And I decided that I was going to try to steal his money. And I was going to use that money to pay the lawyer to take my children away from my ex-husband. Little did I know he had a scheme of his own. And obviously the scheme didn't work out. He stole my car. And I had to go and beg my ex-husband to give me my old car that was locked up in his driveway. So that's what alcohol was doing to me. It was making me think that I was powerful when I was really powerless. And it just pushed me further and further and further into the hole. Eventually, like I said, I took a job change, and that's where I met my Moses. And like I said, I saw her. She was perfectly coiffured. Her hair was always all right. Her clothing was always impeccable. And somehow in the back of my mind, I wanted to be like her. I didn't know she was a recovering alcoholic. She never told me that. But that day after I left the meeting, after you all told me that if you read that yellow book and made the next meeting at 2 o'clock, they would give me some tools on how I could stay away from alcohol just for today. And for whatever reason, I believed you. I did not think about alcohol. I thought about the fear of going back to that dark place. I did not want to go back there. So whatever you told me that day is exactly what I did. And when I left the next meeting, I called this woman on the phone, and I said, "Thank you." And she said, "I can now tell you that I'm a recovering alcoholic. And if you need anything, you call me." And I called her. I called her a lot, a lot. Eventually, she did become my sponsor, and she parted the waters for me. She showed me how to walk through difficult situations and how to stay sober. And you know, when you talk about the home group, well, for me, I have a few home groups. My original home group is Caucus in Brooklyn. For a little time, I lived in Atlanta. That was an opportunity that came because I continued to stay sober, because I now had a chance to make choices as opposed to be forced to do things. And I have a home group there. I have a home group in Washington, D.C. I guess it's my pseudo home group is Brightwood. I also have a home group in Silver Spring just before noon. And it's been a pleasure to know Joann the few years that I've known her. I'm a transplant. I moved to Washington, D.C. We call this the DMV. The District, Maryland, and Virginia. I moved to the DMV about 5 years ago. One of my daughters bought a broken down house in Washington and asked me and my husband, my new husband, to come and live with her in the house and help her refurbish it. And we both retired, so we decided to do that. And it was an interesting experience. I won't talk about that. But I will say this, had it not been for this program, I would not have been able to coexist in a house with a daughter that I thought would never, ever be able to love me in the way that she loves me today and the way that I love her. The kind of damage and the kind of things that occur in an alcoholic household create behaviors that you recognize today that you don't feel good about. But you all have showed me how to get over those feelings. You all hold my hand when I'm crying about it. You help me to know that it's going to be okay. That's the language of the heart. Because I know that you know what that feels like, because you've been where I've been. Even though we may have walked on different roads, we're all here for the same reason, to not drink, and to keep on having the joy that Joann was talking about. I have 2 other children that I love a lot. My son, he may or may not have this disease, but I keep praying for him. My other daughter is a member of Al-Anon. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Al-Anon because it also saved my life in another kind of way. As I said, my other drug became sex. And I didn't realize it at the time. And it wasn't even the sex. It was looking for Mr. Right, trying to find that person that was going to fill me. Even though I had realized that alcohol wasn't going to fix me, and came to this program and you told me that, I then found out that, well, sex might do it. And if it's really good, I'll get what I want. Not so much. What I got was heartache and pain. And I went to a meeting one Saturday. I'll never forget this. And the name of the meeting was Women Who Love Too Much. And I said, well, it was in a building where there were several meetings, AA and OA and a variety of meetings. And I said, let me go in there and see what they're talking about. So I went in the meeting, and I saw there were men in the room. And I said, wait a minute, it says women who love too much. Why are men in the room? But I sat in there and I decided I was going to listen. And what I found out was that it really was a Al-Anon meeting. It wasn't a women who love too much meeting. It was about the power of wanting something that's no good for you. And I was stuck there, even though I had recognized all those things on my 4th step and moved on to 5th and 6th and 7th step. I was still wanting something that was unacceptable. So I continued to go to that meeting, and I got introduced to the other fellowship that I love so much, Al-Anon. It helped me to begin to develop healthier relationships with my children. It helped me develop a better relationship with their father. It helped me to understand that I don't have to know what you're doing. I can just love you. I don't have to tell you how to do it. I can accept you for who you are. Those are some of the things that I learned in that program. I can tell you quickly that that husband that I drank with, that also tried to kill me, I ended up making an amends to him. And I never thought that I would be able to make an amends to him. I felt like he had damaged me in a way that was unrepairable. But you all told me that you can get repaired in this program. And I listened, and I paid attention to what you told me. And as Joann says, if you can't forgive, you're doomed. So I began to pray for him, and I began to forgive him. And we were able to parent our children in a respectable way, even though we had been divorced for many years. We were able to take our children on trips together as adults. We were able to see them to college and get them graduated. We were able to take vacations together as adults, with our children as adults, and to be able to be respectful and respected by our children together. And I didn't know that at the end of that situation that my amends was going to come in a very painful way, in a way. He had a stroke, and he was very, very sick at the end and needed someone to care for him. And I said, I'll do it. And I told my children that I will see that your father is taken care of properly. And I did. And after all of the months and months of taking care of him, going to see him, making sure he was being cared for properly, it wasn't until he was buried that I got to understand the power of forgiveness, that it's possible to really, really free yourself from it. And it's work. It took work for me to do that. It wasn't like, okay, I'll pray a few times and it'll just go away. It was understanding and accepting the fact that he had a God of his own. He made choices of his own. And I was able to get through that and make an amends to not only him, but to my children as well. Because in caring for him, they saw that I loved their father unconditionally, and I was comfortable for them. So I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit, and I'm going to ask the timekeeper, how am I doing? About 3 minutes? Okay, I'm good. I continued to just show up, make meetings, and I was talking to my sponsor now earlier that I did things that I didn't always want to do in this program. I took some suggestions Not that I always wanted to do it. But a gentleman in a group that I used to go to in Brooklyn, he said to me early on, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, that's not a good thing for an alcoholic to not know what they're going to do tomorrow." And this is a big old guy, and I'm like scared of him. I'm like, I don't know if I want to listen to you. So he says, "All right, here's my number, and you meet me tomorrow, and we're going to go to a meeting in New York." And I'm like, okay. So I showed up. Rather than be in the house thinking about that guy that I couldn't get, I met him. And he introduced me to a wonderful woman. We had a little meal together, and we became friends. And we've been friends for maybe 24, 25 years, I guess. Maybe longer than that. But as the story goes, relationships develop into deep love. And today she's my sponsor. And she happens to be in the room, and I'm very happy to say that. Yeah. The language of the heart. The language of the heart. A few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I met a young woman that said that she was struggling with her desire to stay sober. And I was like, "Well, you can do this. You just call me. You just go to a meeting. It's that simple. It's not more complicated than that." And she said, "Well, I think I'm going to try. I'm going to try." And she's been calling me, and she's been not drinking. And about 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting together, and she tells me that, she says that 5 or 6 years ago, when she was in Brooklyn, she was trying to go to meetings, and a couple of people said, "You should call this woman." And they gave her a slip of paper with the number and the name of the woman on it. She said she ignored the piece of paper. She went to another meeting. Oddly enough, in that meeting, somebody else gave her this woman's name and number and said, "You need to call this lady. She might be able to help you." Third time, went to another meeting, still crying about the same thing, and somebody in that room taps her on the shoulder and says, "I'm that woman." She was in the same room that I had got sober in. That's the language of the heart. Who knew that this many years later that I would meet someone that would use that slip of paper? That's the language of the heart. That's why I stay in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I don't know what's next. And I know early on I came to the beginning, maybe the first and second meetings of the convention, and I said, "I want to do some service for the convention, but I don't know if I want to start out at this end of the convention." Little did I know that I was going to end up at this end of the convention. Little did I know. I couldn't say no. I said, "Well, I am not technically, I have a residence in D.C. I recently moved to Bowie, and I don't know, how will they accept me?" I don't have to worry about that, because we are all in this place at the right time for the right reason. That's what I do know. I'll just quickly tell you that being in this program has allowed me to get an education in alcoholism, to actually work with alcoholics, to see people thrive and grow and change, to be able to step back from that and say, "I don't want to do that any longer," to be able to move, to be able to have a life. It's not the life I used to have, it's the life that I'm supposed to have. And I'm content with that. I have an up and down I love you marriage. I have to say that. And he also was a miracle. A friend of mine that was a marketer for treatment facilities invited me to a party. And I was like, I don't want to go to any parties. I had just moved back to New York. and I was not feeling like I wanted to go to any parties. I don't want to go to any parties. She was like, yeah, come to this party, come to this party. So reluctantly, I went to the party, and on the other side of the room, there was this gentleman. He happened to see my shoes, and he came over and he said to me, I'd like to get to know you. Can I have your phone number? And I was like, absolutely not. You all told me to have rules in here. You all showed me how to make a list. You all helped me to build character. I had a list. If this guy didn't meet the requirements of the list, it was a no. So I said, no, I can't give you my number, and you just go away and leave me alone. No, I did. Some people in here will confirm that. In fact, one of the women that stood up at my marriage is in this room, and I love her dearly, Pamela. So anyway, he persisted, and by the end of the party, he came to me and he gave me his business card. He had his home phone number on it, his cell phone number on it, and his mother's phone number on it. So I gave him my number, and he called me that night. And we've been married for 12 years, and together 17 years, something like that. And he's in recovery. So I've been blessed to always have somebody I can say, that's none of your business, it's my business. You mind your own sobriety, I'm minding mine. Thank you very much. But it's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful life. I am so elated to be here. I never could have imagined this at the beginning of my sobriety. I would have never imagined that I would be speaking to women just like me in a convention. Never. This is way beyond. I'm in heaven, as they say. I have been rocketed to that dimension. I am so, so blessed. I am so honored to be here. I hope I get to know some more of you as the weekend goes on. I'm looking forward to going on the Labyrinth. I'm looking forward to spending some time with Joann in meditation. I love you all. I hope that I'll be able to see some of you in some other rooms in some other states. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have one more speaker. Last but not least, our third speaker tonight is Ann G., and she's from Fairfax, Virginia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ann, and I am an alcoholic and an addict. And you guys got to stand up and go to the bathroom so I can get this over with. I got to pee so bad. Seriously. It is not good to sit there drinking water, and I'm so nervous. I am so grateful to be sober. Sally, thank you so much for asking me to come out. I thought there'd be like 10 of you. I had no idea. My sobriety date is May 1st of 1986, and thank you. It is truly, truly the grace of God, the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, my sponsor, and my sisters in recovery. That's why I'm here. I never, ever, ever thought that I would have 25 years of sobriety. I just didn't think it would be possible. It's very funny. When I was listening to Joann, I'm CIA and CIA. My dad was CIA, and he was also a good Catholic, and my mom's Irish, and I'm an alcoholic. So I hit every angle. And I'm going to tell you a funny story, and then I'll tell you my story. I went to the women's retreat over at the Dominican. It was a Dominican retreat. It was an AA women's retreat. And I was on the phone with one of my gals who was having a little challenge getting to the retreat. And so I pulled off, and I'm on Dolly Madison, and I pull off into this parking lot. I don't know where I am. And this was like, I don't know, mid-January. And I'm on my phone talking to her, trying to calm her down, and I'm trying to figure out how to get to the Dominican retreat. And I look over, and there's a cop with a machine gun. And I look back, and there's another one standing by my tire with another machine gun. I was like, holy moly, I'm sober. Don't you know? I'm sober. Well, it turned out I was on CIA property. And I wasn't in a parking lot. I was in the driveway. And they want to know what I was doing there. So after like 10 minutes, they cleared me and they let me go. And I was like, thank God I'm sober. Because if I wasn't sober, I'd be in jail right now. There would not be any International Women's Conference. So I grew up one of 7 children. Like I said, a good Roman Catholic family. And because of my father's business that he was in, we lived in South America, Central America. And when I was about 11 years old, and actually my first drink, I found this photograph after I got sober, and I was like 5 years old, and my mom had a martini glass in one hand and a cigarette in the other. I was destined for Alcoholics Anonymous. When we got sick, you'd get a hot toddy. And for the younger ones, that's like whiskey and, I don't know, milk. I don't know what it was, but it was intended to just kind of help you relax a little bit so you'd quit coughing. And it was, I didn't know that was not okay. When I had kids, they gave them paregoric something or other. It kind of, I guess, has the same effect. And I was in recovery, and I didn't know that was a no-no. But anyway, it numbed their gums. I started drinking when I was about 11 years old, serious, like now I'm like serious about drinking. When I was about 11, my mom came home from church. My mom was at home. We all went to church. We came back. We were living in Miami. And she said, I'm leaving your father. So whoever wants to stay, you can stay. And the rest of you load up in the car, and we're going to the Florida Keys. And so I was like my mom's right hand. So I got in the car with her, with my little sister, my little brother, and a couple of my other brothers, and we went down to the Keys. And it was horrible. Like I had the perfect family. So what happened here? The other part of my story that's a little bit dark is I had an older brother that when he was 10 got molested, and he in turn started with me. The beautiful part of this is through recovery and through outside help, we have a relationship today. And I understand that he never intended to harm me. He just did what had been done to him. And I do love my brother. But it took a lot of work in recovery. I drank to get drunk. That was the only reason I drank. I didn't like the taste of alcohol. I didn't think I was sophisticated when I drank. I just liked to get drunk because then I didn't have to deal. And that second phase of my life living with my mom, she married an alcoholic. And my mom's in recovery. It's a beautiful thing. But Bill was a very scary, intimidating man, and I didn't want to be there. And so alcohol was great because if I drank and I was a blackout drunk, I didn't have to deal with anything. Also, when I grew up, I'm a class of 75 in high school, and living in Florida, they had drive-through liquor stores. That's great. So at 16, I could legally drink, and I did legally drink. I moved to Maryland with my father. My mom kind of had an alcoholic episode. We didn't know that it was called that back then, but that was when she was married to Fleming, number 3, and then she married John, and then she married John again. But it's good. It's good. Because what happened was that I got to learn that I needed to be self-sufficient. What AA taught me is the opposite of that. But when I came in here, I didn't really want anybody to get close to me. I was very scared to trust anybody. There was a lot of movement growing up. You know, you never knew where the safe zone was. And there was a lot of pain. And so drugs are part of my story. You know, I was, several of my brothers were in Vietnam. They came home. They taught me how to get high. I didn't really like it, but, you know, in fact, don't ever put banana peels in the oven and think that you can smoke them. That's a myth. They told me that. It doesn't work. And you definitely don't want to get high if your father's in the CIA, because, you know, that doesn't work too well. It was in the late 70s, my dad finally had enough of us, so he sold his house and moved to Florida. You guys are on your own. And so without telling you all the details, in fact, D.C. always freaks me out, because when I lived in Maryland, and now I'm in Virginia, I used to come into D.C. sober, and then I don't know how I got home, because there's all these circles, and it made me dizzy. I got sober, as I said, actually March 15th of 1986. And what happened was I got married to a man that I met downtown in a bar from New York. I didn't like him, but I liked his friends, and I liked the way he partied. And so that was perfect for me. We then had a child. And when my daughter Katie was born, I didn't drink through the whole pregnancy. But I'm telling you, when she was like 6 weeks old and I didn't have to nurse anymore, I had a business trip, and I went and I got rocket hammered, and that's what I did. Part of the fact that I had been abused as a child, and it really went on till I was like 27 years old, is that I learned to be very promiscuous. And that was how I got validated, because I was going to get to you, the men, not the women, before they got to me. And I was going to get from them what I wanted, and I was going to be in charge. They were not going to be in charge of me. The problem with that was that it broke my heart over and over and over again, and it tainted my soul. You know, when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a broken woman. I was a high-bottom drunk, I was a binge drinker, and I was broken. And my last drunk was in Richmond, Virginia at the tobacco company. I went down there, yep. And this is how I drank, okay? I was my brother's wingman. I could tell any guy how to pick up a woman. And so I'm at the bar. My daughter, Katie, was with me. She's up in the hotel room with Maria, the nanny, who'd only been on board with us for like 6 weeks. And I made sure that they were set. And my intention was I was just going to have a drink. Only a drink. And I had all these thank you notes from my job. I'm in sales, and I was doing my job thing. And I was going to have my drink and then go back upstairs. Well, you know, there's never one drink. You know, I'm a shooter queen. I love doing shooters. You know, I like hammer them down. So a couple guys show up, and we're going to have a contest. So we went to the tobacco company. First one to get hit on had to buy drinks for the rest of them. Well, I get over there, and I'm drinking white wine and creme de cassis, which is the sissiest non-drink drink that you could ever imagine. And I start, like, feeling like I'm going to black out. And I got a little freaked out about that. And I was like, ooh, what's that? So the game was over. I don't want to play the game anymore. Made them take me back to the hotel. Now I'm back at the hotel, and I'm fine. And there's music playing, and I love to dance. I still love to dance. Dancing in sobriety is awesome. It is so much fun. It's the best. Well, this is how I drank, and this is what keeps me sober today. We get back to the bar. I proceed to go to the room with one of the guys. Okay, he tells me I'm too skinny. I go back. The other guy who really wants to be with me, I end up with him. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. He's spitting on me, calling me a slug, a pig, and a whore. And I don't care about that. I knew that. You didn't have to tell me that. I could have told you that. Seriously, I knew all about that. But this is what happened. When I went back up to my room, Katie had fallen asleep at the door. And the only way to get into that room was to open the door and kind of move her little body. And I scooped her up in my arms, and I said, "Dear God, please help me. I can't do this anymore." I could not stop for me, but I could stop for that child. And I didn't know what to do. However, in the years of therapy that I'd been in, trying to figure out why I did what I did and why I couldn't stop self-destructive behavior, why I couldn't stop cheating on my husband, why I didn't care about him or care about myself, some woman in this group therapy had said, "You might have a problem with alcohol, and there's a great place called Alcoholics Anonymous that you might want to look into." I was pissed at her. I couldn't even believe that she would imply that. My stepdad was an alcoholic, and he was a pervert. That wasn't who I was. But you know what? She planted the seed for me. Thank God she planted the seed for me. So I called intergroup when I got back up to Virginia, and I don't know how I got home. I mean, I reeked of alcohol. I'm telling you, Maria was Latin American Catholic, and I know she was praying for me all the time. You know, seriously, she was. I mean, there is nothing better than a good Salvadorian woman who's Catholic, who doesn't drink, to pray for you. And she was praying for me. The thing that was beautiful is she saw something good in me. I couldn't see good in me, but she saw something good in me. And I am so grateful to Maria for those silent prayers. So I came to my first meeting in Bailey's Crossroads at the Independence Club in Falls Church on March 15th, 1986. There was a woman from intergroup who said, "I'll meet you there." I never saw her. She didn't show. I don't care. I walked up those stairs. People were smoking. It was awesome. It was like walking in to this like club, this secret club, you know, and I'm looking around going, well, they're laughing and they're like, and I couldn't even pull my hair off my face at that time. I was so ashamed of myself. I was so disgusted with the woman that I had become. But they greeted me. They welcomed me. They said, "Come in and sit down." And back then, holy moly, they said, "Honey, this is no prom and you're no princess. So you need to sit down and you need to put the cotton in your ears or in your mouth and listen, because you got nothing we want to hear. You had nothing we want." And hurt my little feelings. But you know what? They were right. They were right. And this woman, Sandy, and I don't know if she's in the rooms because she had another commitment, but my sponsor, she came up to me and she said, "I'm going to sponsor you because you need that." You know, and I was like, what the heck is going on here? You going to sponsor me? Whew. But I said, okay, you know, because she said, "Are you willing to do anything it takes to not drink today?" And I said, absolutely. Because remember, that desperation when we walk in and we just want a different way of living. Well, she got me on the steps immediately. She said, "Are you powerless over alcohol? And when you drink, is your life unmanageable?" And I said, "Oh my God, yes." And then she said, "You know, the second step is came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity." And I really had a problem with that because the God of my understanding from my church didn't post for me, you know, my opinion. Today, I know that's absolutely not true because if it hadn't been for my higher power, I wouldn't be here sober today. Because but for the grace of God, I'm here, and that's it. Well, I always felt like my mom was a little loon tune. I didn't know about alcoholism. She knows that I am standing here saying that. And she's a very proud and dignified woman, and I'm not taking her inventory. But I didn't know. I just thought it was mental illness, and I did not want to be mentally ill. I was, but I didn't want to be, you know? Really, insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. So what Sandy did was she sat me down with a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, our living tool, our guide to life. And she walked me through, and she explained to me that it was really talking about alcohol or drugs. The reason my anniversary date is May 1st and not March 15th is because I went out on April 30th and did 2 lines of cocaine. 2. Now that's drug abuse. But see, I had 6 weeks of AA in my belly, and I knew I couldn't drink. I didn't like getting high, but I didn't think I was an addict. You know, the fact that I did just about every drug I possibly could to excess, but, you know, I never shot up, so I didn't think I was an addict. Well, Sandy explained to me the facts and had me go in and pick up a one-day chip, and I'm crying. And she said, don't you ever come crying to me the day after. You come crying the day before. You know, and your brain needs some washing, because your best thinking got you to that party, and you had no business being there. They were so mean back then. Saved my life. There was a guy who said, you're never going to get a year, and I said, I'll show you. I had my calendar. I marked off every day. When I got my year, he said, you're never going to get 2, and I went, oh, yes, I am. Now, remember, I have 7 brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest daughter. I'm child number 5. I'm very competitive, okay? I love sports. You know, I think I'm like 5'11". I'm 5'2". I weigh nothing. I think I'm big. In AA, there was a softball tournament, and I'm the coach rounded me around third, sent me home. The pitcher was 350 pounds, about 6'8". He went to tag me. I went flying, and I came up fist up. You know, and my husband's going, oh, my God, are you kidding me? Now I got to go deal with that guy. But, you know, AA actually has given me courage. Third step, that that I had to turn my will and my life over a power greater than myself. You know what's interesting? So in my 24th year of sobriety, because I've had a lot of emotional bottoms in sobriety, I've been at D.C. at hospital for like a week, where I institutionalized myself, because at about 7 years, all my abuse started coming up, and craziness. All the things we can get through with dignity in sobriety. But what happened was, I lost my train of thought. I guess it wasn't important. Anyway, last year, that's what it was, because I have 5 kids now. 4 of them have never seen me drink. Katie hadn't seen me drink since she was 2 years old. That's a miracle. That's AA. Well, what happened was that some of my kids have gotten this disease. And somehow or another, I thought that they would be free from that. And they're not, you know, it's genetic. My husband's in recovery. He's the addict, I'm the alcoholic. So we've got some addicts, some alcoholics. We've got a nice little blend going on. But I thought that, you know, I'm doing service work, I'm working with women, I've got a sponsor, I go to meetings, I carry the message gets delivered to me. Don't I get like some kind of a pass here? And so last summer, I didn't know if we were going to make it in my marriage. You know, I had a kid who OD'd, another one with 2 DUIs. I was like, you know what, I am like done here. Seriously. And drinking was not an option, but checking out sure was. Now that's about the most selfish, self-centered set of feelings that I get when I'm in absolute terror and fear. So what happened was I was on my belly, not on my knees. I was on my belly. And I finally got the 3rd step. Not that I hadn't been practicing it all along, because I've done all 12 steps over and over and over and over again. But I got that it says we turn our will and our lives over with complete abandon, not partial abandon. And I was still holding on to those kids. Like somehow or another I could spare them from my life experience. I didn't want them to go through this. Why would I rob them from this beautiful program? Why would I do that? And who is it to say that it's my choice? And my sponsor would say to me, God has no grandchildren, but I didn't want them to hurt. You know, 3 of my kids have been abused. That broke my heart. How come I didn't get to protect them? But you guys get me through this with grace and dignity. My husband's a cancer survivor. You guys got us through that. I cheated on my husband at 7 years. The first one I left because they told me also that I was like not Janis Joplin, and that You know, if I stayed with the first one who liked to party, that I was probably going to end up partying. Not that they were telling me whether or not I should be or shouldn't be married, but that really, since I didn't like them, I didn't respect them, I didn't want to be there, I was cheating on him all the time, that maybe I should do him a favor and set him free so that he could actually find somebody who might treat him with dignity and respect, which, by the way, he has. So, you know, they, like, basically told me what to do. This man, I was telling Inez, I 13-stepped him. I met him at the beach. I was not quite yet divorced, but I was separated. I was dating a guy in the program, and I saw him, like, hanging out at the Plim. And I said, God, he just looks so lonely there. I think I'll invite him to go down on some rides with my daughters and I. And a year later, we were married. I had a bun in the oven, you know, because you got to do it the right way. Now, none of my kids know that, so don't tell them that I got pregnant before I got married, okay? They haven't yet done the math on that, which blows my mind. And don't do it that way, you know, but that's just, you know, because I didn't follow directions. And then we had twins. And then I had my tubes tied, because I said, that's enough. Because I know I have a problem with consumption, and I have the need to have a lot, but that was enough kids. So here we are, 28, 24, 22, and twin 20. So if you could survive that and, like, not drink, that's got to be God. You know, seriously. And my husband and I have been happily married for 24 years, and that's a miracle. Considering, remember, that I went out on him when I had 7 years of sobriety. And you know why I did that? It had nothing to do with him. It was my form of self-destruction, because I couldn't imagine why that man would love me. How could he love me if he knew the kind of person that I was? And so I subconsciously was trying to blow this sucker up. And through that, and my sponsor being there going, I don't know if this is right or not for you guys. The only thing I know is that when I'm helping another alcoholic, that I'm doing the right thing. We got through it. It was hard, but we got through it. And he trusts me again. But it took a while to earn that trust. My sponsor told me, when you make an amends, you never say, I'm sorry, but. Because the minute you throw that but behind your amends, you've negated it. You say, I'm sorry. Driving over here, this is a beautiful thing. One of my daughters, so careful what you tell your kids. So my husband says to her, she's like 19 years old, and he says, you know, when I was in the Army, people used to, like, get married so they could live off base, and they'd have more income. Well, she's dating this guy who's in the Army, and next thing I know, December comes around, and she goes, well, Mom, you know, I got married in May. And I'm like, what? So anyway, that didn't work out too well. However, she's divorced, and now she recently was asked to be married properly. And so the young man came to our home. He asked us for our blessing of their marriage. She just got engaged on Valentine's. She is an opportunity for redemption, which is a beautiful thing, so she doesn't have to be carrying this shame. So we're driving over. I'm driving from Baltimore down here. She's like, Mommy, you haven't called me since I got engaged. It was like 24 hours ago. Oh, my God. But you know what? After I stepped out of myself and stopped feeling like a really bad mom, I said to her, I really, and this is AA. I said, honey, I'm so sorry that I hurt you. And today I feel that. When I hurt somebody, it hurts. Like, I don't want to hurt anybody anymore. I don't get any pleasure from taking somebody's inventory or stepping on them for my own, betterment. You guys taught me how to be compassionate, how to be caring, how to, listen and help, and how to, and Inez talked about this, how to mind my own business. How in the world do I know what's good for you? I don't even know what's good for me. and my kids going through what they went through, it taught me about Al-Anon. It taught me I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. And God could and would if you were sought. So, I don't know how much time I have here, 3 minutes. I just want to say, if you haven't had the opportunity to work the steps or die, motherfucker. Okay? I'm serious. They will save your life. The women that I am graced with, that allow me to work the steps with them, that trust me enough, they saved my life. And I'm telling you, it pisses me off when people dick around with this thing. This is life and death. If I offend anybody, forgive me, pray for me, but read your big book, study it. It is the material that saves our life. We have 1 day's reprieve, a daily reprieve based on our spiritual condition, period. That's it. That's all we have. And when I think, and very rarely has it happened, but the thought of alcohol will cross my mind, is because I have been resting on my laurels, and I am not taking this thing seriously. This is a gift that we've been given. How in the world I got spared from this disease? The rest of my family, other than my mom, they all drink. I don't care. Drink away. I don't want to. And when I even think about it, it makes me nauseous. What a blessing that is. We are so lucky to have this sisterhood of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you guys are my sisters. You used to scare the living crap out of me. Today, I embrace you because you're the only ones who are going to be honest enough to tell me the truth when I'm trying to run a game. And we all know how to run a game, don't we? We know how to be manipulative. We know how to be passive. We know how to be aggressive. We know how to slide tackle. We know it all. And I need you all to hold me accountable. If you see me walking out of here and being a pig or a slut or a whore, you get in my face and you say you don't behave that way because you're a representation of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love you guys. Have a great night.